Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So excited about our Black History edition. Thanks for joining. Today's Health is Wealth, episode number 27. Thanks again for everyone for being here. It is Black History Month, as you know. It is February, and I was really excited today to bring on one of my mentors, advisors that I have been working with for the last few years to talk a little bit about what it was like in 1973 in the South Bronx, in New York City, and the history associated with how we were healing our communities, how we took the initiative to heal our communities at one of the worst moments in health crisis in our country that affected Black and Brown people like nothing else. And it's really exciting that I get to have this leader, this freedom fighter, Dr. Kokayi Patterson, to join us today. So I want to welcome to our show, our Black History edition, Dr. Kokayi Patterson. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's been too long. We should have had you on before now, but everything is about timing, and I'm glad that you could join us today. How are you?
I'm absolutely fantabulous. Thank you so much for asking. And how are you, dear sister?
I'm doing well. Thank you, sir. Doing very well. I want to jump right in because we have a
Yeah,
lot of things to cover today.
sure.
There's so much work that you've done, and I want to make sure that the people know about it. So let's get started with kind of who Dr. Kokayi is. You have a long list of credentials. So let's just kind of start with, we can start with the ADS Collective. That's how I was introduced to you. I met a fellow brother, Lakeem, in Atlanta before I moved to Las Vegas a few years ago. And he introduced me to the ADS Collective. Can you tell us what the ADS Collective is?
Yes, the ADS Collective, ADS stands for Acupuncture. First of all, good afternoon to everyone. Good morning, afternoon, based on where you're located, to everyone. And again, thank you, Nicole, for giving me this opportunity to share with the community. The ADS Collective stands for Acupuncture Detox Specialist Collective. This is a group of people that we've been working with and training since 1998 when we initiated the Acupuncture Collective. And historically speaking, Dr. Laila Africa, who is one of our health and wellness healers, who's an ancestor now, who's responsible for so many things in our community, was one of my first students in that class. So remember that name, Dr. Laila Africa. We're now all over the country. But that's as a result of working with the African Holistic Health Association, Dr. Mutulu Shakur, who started this acupuncture protocol.
Yeah, Dr. Mutulu Shakur, if you all are not familiar, Dr. Mutulu, another freedom fighter, that it was the stepfather of Tupac, that is the stepfather of Tupac
The
Shakur, the late
father of Tupac.
of
Yeah,
Tupac
we don't
Shakur.
play the
That is
step stuff.
correct. That's
We
right.
correct
That's
that
right.
all the time. But we understand why people say that. But no,
Yes,
that's his
that was his
dad. That's his
dad.
father.
Yes,
He never
that's
called
right.
him a stepfather.
That's
But
right.
no,
He
we
took his
understand.
name, so
Yeah.
obviously he had enough respect for him to do that. That's
Oh, no
right.
question.
Dr. Mutulu was instrumental in helping to raise Tupac to become the freedom fighter that he was in his own right to the generation that he was actually directly speaking to.
Correct.
But Dr. Mutulu was speaking to a different generation of us within our own communities. And Dope is Death is a film that we'll talk about a little bit later. But let's talk about how you were introduced to Dr. Mutulu.
Sure.
How did that come about?
That's really a wonderful story. I myself was addicted to hardcore drugs at age 13, and I decided I was going to smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol and drop out of school. So the 7th grade, I just got up out of it, made it out of the 7th grade, and that was it. And I started to drink, hanging out with the guys on the corner every day. what they call thug life. We called it just hanging out. It wasn't as violent as it is today. Soon thereafter, I became addicted to harder drugs, heroin, and began to inject heroin into my veins. The country, of course, at that point was in alarm. Vietnam War was over. We were flooded with drugs. And they said, well, this is how we're going to deal with it. We're going to take a drug to deal with this drug. So they took methadone to deal with the heroin crisis. So this young man decided to get into the methadone program, trying to seek some help. And I became addicted to the methadone. Now, in order to get off of the methadone, I went back to using heroin and cannabis, to get off, of the methadone. So the cannabis was used in a certain kind of way. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just knew that I felt better and it would cool me out. And, I could get through all of these withdrawals even,
Right.
by smoking big blunts and stuff that we were doing back in the day. I went into a drug treatment program called RAP Incorporated. My first mentor, Ron Clark, remember that name, who started the first African-centered drug treatment program in 1970. At that point, I went into that program. I walked in the door and I saw someone using acupuncture. I said, these people are crazy in here. I was about 17 and a half years old. I was a youngin'.
Yes.
And I stayed, though. That was an experimental program that they did. I found out, after I stayed there. 2 years later, after being drug-free, politicizing myself, and I mean that, reading books like Malcolm X and, studying Martin Luther King's work and, studying Marcus Garvey, who had the Back to Africa movement, the United Negro Improvement Association, beginning to see what this group, the Nation of Islam, was doing, and our association with the Black Panther Party. So in 1970, we were connected with the Panthers here in Washington, D.C., and we were Panther Cubs. So we worked with them, helped them sell the papers and, free food programs. And we adopted a lot of those things ourselves, and we began to have our own free food, free clothing programs. 1972, they had a major meeting in Gary, Indiana, called the Black Assembly, what we now know as the Black Caucus. All of the senators and, mayors
Elected
and,
officials that are Black.
yes,
Yes.
the
That
National
identify as
Black
Black.
Caucus.
Yes.
And they meet every year, this major convention that they have. You're talking thousands and thousands of people. So it was that way up there. You had hundreds of thousands of people that weekend that were coming through. And we were up there debating about the processes of drug treatment, that we felt that methadone, using a drug, was not drug treatment. We felt that rehabilitation was not drug treatment, but that re-education was drug treatment. Instead of locking people up, locking them down, blaming people, for their victimization. How did the drugs get in the community? That's a whole nother piece right there.
Subject, right?
Yeah, whole nother subject. So,
Yes.
We began to politicize ourselves, educate ourselves about the social implications, the economic implications, but as well as the political implications. And that allowed us to be real grounded. So I'm hearing a young man in the convention hall hooping and hollering as we out there passing out flyers against police brutality, methadone addiction, dead drug treatment programs that don't work, police. And he's saying, we have to get it together.
That the community's facing today. Same issues.
Same exact
50
stuff.
years later. Yes.
And he was there speaking to this audience, and, just blaming them for all of the wrong that was going on and not standing up for our community and really representing and getting this methadone out and bringing in things like acupuncture. And they had taken over the stage. So now me coming from Washington, D.C., from the hood, I like these cats right here. These cats ain't scared. They commandeered the whole stage, and we met shortly thereafter that. And 30 days later, we had formed an organization called BAAANA, Blacks Against Drugs. We had recruited all of the major culturally orientated programs around the country, programs that understood the importance of recognizing cultural identity in terms of the people that you're dealing with. So I'm dealing with a Black community. I have to have things that they can relate to and identify with. If I'm dealing with the Latino community, the white community, I have to have things that they can identify with that raises their self-esteem.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Clark was wonderful with that.
And wait, one real quick, Dr. Kokayi,
Uh-huh.
bad. You said blacks against drugs. So just for clarification, at the time, was cannabis considered a drug?
Yes,
Or
cannabis was still considered a drug at that time.
it was?
You came in right at the point where the stuff started flipping, actually, in the
Yeah.
last however many years. But yeah, drugs, marijuana was still on that list. Cannabis
Right.
was still on that list
Hmm.
as a drug of abuse, as
Hmm.
well as they began to call it a gateway. Shortly thereafter, it became gateway.
Oh, that's where that
Everybody
language
uses
came
drugs.
from.
They used to use marijuana,
Right.
but
So
everybody who uses
this is
marijuana
19.
don't use drugs. We know
So
that.
this is
So
1972, not
yes,
beginning
this
of
is 72 exactly.
1973.
This is
So who's the
72.
president at this time? Are we
I don't
talking
even
about
know.
Nixon?
I would.
Was it
If you
Nixon at
ask
that
me, I don't
time?
even know. I wasn't even concerned.
Oh, okay,
Who the
right.
president was because they weren't helping anybody. I don't know if it was Nixon or Carter or
If
Johnson.
I'm pretty
Somewhere
sure it
around in
was.
there because it was the early '70s, so it had to
I'm
be one of
sure it
those
was
cats.
still Nixon, because we know that he was
Yeah,
in
I think it
office
was might have been Nixon at that point.
in 1969. So I'm sure it was
70,
probably,
70. We
yeah.
72 now. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
we in
So
72 now.
so he was one of the ones that coined the term gateway drug, right? And
Yes,
using cannabis
absolutely.
as a gateway drug, and
Yes,
how it was adding to the drug problem in the
correct.
communities. And so now you've formed this organization with,
Hmm.
I'm guessing, along with Dr. Matulu.
Yes,
And
he along with Ron Clark at Rap Incorporated put
got
that
it.
together and brought in other organizations. So it was Matulu and Ron Clark at Rap. My 45-year mentor, Ron Clark.
Yes, yes. And so now it's 1973, and from what I understand by watching the film, folks, if you haven't seen the film Dope is Death yet, that's what Dr. Kakai is referring to, the lead up to this incident
Hmm.
that happened 50 years ago.
Hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit about how that transpired? In
Yeah. Um,
1973,
yeah.
Matulu took over the hospital, the Lincoln Hospital. What
Yeah.
what what happened?
Yeah, the Lincoln Hospital takeover a little bit different than Lincoln Detox. The Lincoln Hospital takeover had to do with a hospital that was not operating properly. Lincoln Hospital was not operating, was not serving the community. The Young Lords Party and many other activists took that hospital over. They took that hospital over, and at no point did the services stop. The services actually got better those days that they took it over because people were being treated properly. The urgent care was there because people were focused, etc. But they commandeered. No gunshots were fired, no injuries, no rumbling, no rioting. Nothing happened. There was a negotiation that took place. Dr. Matulu Shakur sat at that table and was one of the leaders in that negotiation. That will be shown on the Dope is Death video.
Documentary.
Again, now we were young. We were 20, 21 years old, 22 years old at the most, that this young man was doing this. And he was involved in the movement. And when he was 16, 17 years old, there was an actual meeting where they were organizing a group called the Republican of Africa, and Matulu was in charge of security. And the police raided Aretha Franklin's father's church and shot the church up, fired the church up, and Matulu Shakur protected the leader of that group at that point. And he was only about 17, 18 years of age. So his commitment to taking care of us as Black people has always been there. So that same thing happened at Lincoln. And eventually they signed a contract. The services began to change. Step back a minute. 1970, Matulu's child is in a car accident, paralyzed. Sister Yuri Kochiyama, who was a Japanese progressive revolutionary sister who hung out with Malcolm and so many other people, said, Matulu, you want to check this acupuncture out? And he went down, he smelt this moxie. He said, what is that? He said, that's moxie. You want to? So he used that to bring his child back to health.
So the
The
child was
paralyzation
walking.
was resolved and everything. That was his first exposure to acupuncture. He went
Wow.
back to Lincoln Detox, which was the drug treatment center under Lincoln Hospital, but Lincoln Detox, which was the methadone drug treatment program that Matulu had started working at, doing classes, and other people were there, and went back to them to the meeting. The Young Lords and Panthers and everybody was there, and he said, hey guys, this is it right here. we need to do acupuncture. That's how it got started. So the Young Lord Party and the Panthers and everybody else say, yeah, let's roll. And they've been doing it ever since. Here in DC, it didn't pick up until the late 80s. I went back in 78 and started to study under Dr. Shakur in 1978. But in 72, when we went to Gary, a month later in New Orleans, I had the flu, and he gave me my first treatment. And then I knew that acupuncture worked because
Was
I had the flu
working.
and he was sticking needles in my feet. And I'm like, well, what are you doing down there? But he knew what he was doing in terms of the connections with the body. And of course, I graduated from acupuncture school later on. And I, of course, understand what he was doing. But the symptoms disappeared in 45 minutes. And I asked him, I said, did you have drugs in these needles? No sniffles, no aches, no pains, no fever. This was incredible. This is like a
Right.
miracle to me.
Right.
And of course, my clients have asked me that too. Did you have drugs in those needles?
So,
This could
so
work
you
like
were
that.
one of the students of Dr. Matulu at the time. You learned
Yes.
how to do acupuncture
Mhm.
because they were teaching it at the Lincoln Detox Center.
That's correct.
And that's where you went to get treatment to get off of your addiction, right?
No, that's not where I went to get treatment off my addiction. I had gotten my addiction straight before I even met Matulu.
Tulu.
Remember,
Okay,
at
got it.
13, I was an alcoholic, 15 using drugs, and at 18, I went into rap.
Oh,
And when I
got
went
it.
into rap, I read Malcolm X's book, and I said, wow, this dude was cruddier than me. This dude was worse than me. He sold women's bodies. He
Yeah.
was a pimp. He
Yeah.
was a drug dealer, a burglar. I said, this dude was the worst of the worst. But now he's the greatest of the greatest. He's our best orator, our best representative, and that does not belittle, Martin or Marcus Garvey or any of those other
Right.
leaders that we've had. But the most prolific and
The most revolutionary.
the most prolific. And
Yeah.
and when I read that book, I stopped drugs in 1970, and then 2 years later, I was like assistant director of our community service. That had, like I said, we were Panther Cubs. We were doing all kind of work, revolutionary work in the community. And then I meet this guy in 1972. But we were already connected with the Panthers
Of course.
in DC and doing progressive work
Of
in
course.
DC. And then I meet him, and he's doing the same thing. And
Of
that's
course.
what brought that together. Lincoln Hospital take over, and then Lincoln Detox, and then he brought acupuncture into Lincoln Detox. And when he did that, and this is crucial because when we talk about history, people die and give their lives for this.
Yeah.
We had a white doctor, a European doctor, and when we brought the acupuncture in, we became under investigation, by the government, and they
Right.
sent a White House representative to the clinic. We weren't using the methadone money. We were using acupressure. We were using acupuncture because we didn't have any money. We were standing there with our fingers in the ears and, doing different things like that. And eventually we got the needles and started treating.
Right.
And they accused us and came and did the search, and they discovered our doctor, Dr. Richard Taft, dead in the closet in the auditorium with a hot shot of drugs. Richard Taft, Dr. Richard Taft, was our medical doctor on staff in order for us to operate that
You had to have a
facility.
medical doctor.
He got
MD.
murdered.
Mhm.
And they won't say that because, nobody has been, brought to trial for his death. But he was the great grandson of President Taft. So that lets you know that it doesn't matter when it comes down to monies, because if you have 500 to 600 people going through a building every day getting acupuncture treatment, staying off drugs, calculate that money. 500, 600, 700 people getting free acupuncture.
Right.
If you can just envision, instead of people
Versus
walking in like mules getting methadone and going
Yes.
into those programs,
Clinics.
walking in
Mhm.
like that, getting acupuncture, amazing,
Right.
And
Right.
the first
And so
time
they
when
had
I
to
saw it, I was totally impressed.
they were determined to shut you all down because they knew
Yes,
that your practices were working better than their methadone. And
absolutely,
like you said, the methadone was money, right? They were
absolutely.
able to generate money by getting these people addicted to methadone,
Yeah,
off of heroin, but addicted to methadone, a new drug.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Instead of using herbs and even having cannabis in that package,
yeah.
in
Yes,
that process,
that's right.
as years went on, I began to study and became a naturopathic doctor, studying under Matulu starting in 1978 when he gave me my first book,
Yes.
and eventually became an acupuncturist, but a naturopath, a herbalist, nutritionalist, HIV counselor, substance abuse counselor, mental health specialist for 30, 40 years, but just able to get in that field and pull in the things that are needed to do what we call a holistic approach to this process. In 1975, we're talking about Black history here in health. I've been truly blessed, Nicole, as you very well know. In 72, I meet, Mutulu Shakur,
Yes.
In 75, I meet Dick Gregory,
Nice.
and Dick
Yeah.
Gregory, everybody knows, one of our greatest healers and ancestors in terms of health. And eventually he became a patient of mine as that full circle, as he passed a few years ago. I was working on him. His daughter sang at my mother's funeral, and he was one of my greatest teachers. Fast forward 1978, I meet Dr. Sebi. My son contracts cancer, and my sister turns me on to Dr. Sebi. So I meet Dr. Sebi and we work on my son, healed his cancer. Fast
What it?
forward 40 years later, my son's cancer came back. There were some things that he did that, and we worked and kept him around for another year or two. But 48 years, after me meeting Dr. Sebi and working with him, and I had Dr. Sebi here in DC, 2016. The posters on the wall over here, and shortly before they actually,
Murdered him. Yeah.
something tricky there
Yeah.
in terms of him losing his life.
Yes. Yes.
But he was one of my mentors, and I learned so much from him.
And
Dr. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. Can you tell us real quick about the African Holistic Health Association? When
Yes.
did you
Yes.
develop that?
Yes.
Because I know that was part of leading up, meeting all of these individuals and working with them kind of led you to developing and creating the African Holistic Health Association.
Yes. In 1979, again, they attacked BAAANA and Mutulu went on the run and was underground for many, many, many years. In 1985, I began to work in an acupuncture clinic in DC run by another ancestor, Dr. Jing Wu, one of our Asian brothers and revolutionaries. And he had a free acupuncture clinic here in Washington, D.C. And that was 1983, 80, all the way up until I think 89, 90. And I became the coordinator of that acupuncture detox clinic. They closed down. In 1988, at that clinic in the basement, we decided that we was going to put together a organization to service Black people, to promote and provide holistic health concepts, education, practices, therapies, and processes to heal our people. And I had a meeting, myself, Dr. Gerald Douglas, who is the co-founder and one of my major mentees. He's still around and not an ancestor, still around doing the work. And we decided to form an organization. So the debate was whether we was going to call it the Black Holistic Health Association or the African Holistic. So everybody, no, let's call it Black American or African American. Watch that Black thing. And no, we're going to call it what it is. It's African Holistic Health Association.
Yes.
And we began to spell the word holistic with a W.
Yes.
So in 1988, people was like, that's not how you spell it. I said, that's how we spell it. Why you spell it like that? Because we want to do the whole thing.
Body, the whole body. It's not just one part of the body.
And we had to correct the alignment too, because we would say, what's holistic health? People say, oh, you're talking body, mind, spirit. And we'd say, no, spirit, mind, body. The spirit is first.
Yes.
The mind is second. And the body, the easiest part of doing this thing, is third. But it's not whole, because you don't have the community. And as you know, the ADS Collective, we teach spirit, mind, body, and community. Environment, community. So we say environment, we're talking the air, the water, and we leave out the people. Yeah. We leave out the buildings. We leave out the violence in the community or the calmness in the community.
And it's all a part, and it's all encompassing. It's
all a part
of healing. It's all a part of, especially healing our communities. With the traumas that our communities experience, you can't leave out the outer experiences, their environment, right? When you're
Yes.
talking about healing a nation, when you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about healing a community. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's so important. And that's why I was introduced to you, Dr. Kokayi, back in 16, I think it was, or maybe even, no, not 16, because I got diagnosed in 17. So it was at the
Yeah.
end of 17,
Yes.
maybe 18.
Yes.
And it was because the brother Lakeem knew that you had worked with patients that had HIV. And so were you using this detox collective, a holistic approach to helping people? You've told me stories about
Yeah.
living in DC
Yeah.
and bringing brothers and sisters back from
Yeah.
AIDS,
Yes.
reversing the disease because of your
Yes.
practices. Can
Yes.
you explain a little bit to us on how was what was the response from the
Yeah.
government and city officials when they knew the work that you all were doing in your clinic
Absolutely.
back during that time?
In 1992, Ron Clark, my 45-year mentor, received a grant to open a facility, a residential facility for individuals with dual diagnosed substance abuse and HIV. We know the number one mode of transmission was sex, and then secondly, drug abuse. I mean, needles and so forth. Here in Washington, D.C., we number one on across the board with so much stuff. And so they got funded for this facility. They put me in charge of the facility. Now, when we opened the facility, I turned the facility into a vegetarian drug treatment facility.
Right.
Everybody thought in 1992 that was totally insane, against the law. You cannot not. What do you mean we can't have no hamburgers and hot dogs and so forth and so on? So this particular facility was straight vegan, straight vegetarian. The other drug part of our program was 3 times a week, vegan, vegetarian, and the other weeks they had chicken and fish,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
never pork, beef, or any other, kinds of. They used honey and not sugar at
And
the This is the only program probably in the country doing this.
right.
Using at that point soy milk, because almond milk wasn't
Didn't
out.
exist.
Using
Right.
soy milk.
Yeah. Right.
Using honey, whole wheat bread. But the
Right.
whole wheat bread is better than the white bread. So
Right.
all these things were going on. When I took the facility over, we had 10 people who came into the facility. At the same time we were doing this, Dr. Alim Muhammad, another one of the individuals who helped me start the African Holistic Health Association, along with Dr. Douglas, Dr. Prim DeBen, Dr. Sabi, Dr. Welsing, who was our mental health specialist. These are all the people that were a part
Dr.
of
Frances Crest Welsing.
Absolutely.
I
Dr.
love her.
Frances Crest Welsing, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have got my head together to open up the African Holistic Health Association in 92. I went to her for about a few sessions to talk with her about what I wanted to do,
And family,
and
if you
she
don't
got me
know,
straight.
yeah, if
She
you
got
don't
me
know who
straight.
Dr. Frances Crest Welsing is, please look her up. She wrote um
ISIS papers.
the ISIS papers. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah.
Kakai. She was a professor at Howard University.
Yeah.
She was one of my dad's favorite professors.
Yeah.
And while we're speaking about Dr. Alim Muhammad,
Yep.
Dr.
Your dad.
Alim,
That's right.
yes, Dr. Alim also went to school with my dad at Howard, and they practiced together and in their undergrad. And so it's when I met you and I knew that you
Yeah.
knew all of these people,
Yeah.
that my dad, who I admire so much as a liberationist, as a person of the people, that knew the importance of educating his people. I knew that it was destined. I knew that my dad
Yeah.
wanted us
Yeah.
to come together, that the
Absolutely.
ancestors were working behind the scenes to make sure that we connected.
Yes.
And so now that you've created, now we're in the early 90s, you've created the African Holistic Health Association. What comes next in your work, in your advocacy work, in your freedom work? Because Dr. Matulu at this point is locked up, right? I know you said that he'd gone
No, he's
underground
out.
for a few years,
He's
right?
out.
No, I know that he is now. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is the police finally caught up with him, and they accused
He
him
was
of a
locked up
crime
for
that he did not
37
do.
years.
Right, he was locked up for 37 years, and they convicted him of a crime he did not commit. The
Correct.
person who actually committed the crime admitted to that crime a few years later, and they still did not let Dr. Matulu out of prison. As we know, he got locked up in Georgia. And so, as we know, our freedom fighters from the 70s and 80s, what they did more often than not was they persecuted them. They made them criminals, right? Even if it was a crime they didn't commit, they found a way to criminalize them and lock them up in prison. And that's what they did to Dr. Mutulu. And recently, I had the honor of meeting Dr. Mutulu. He is out now. Because of freedom fighters like yourself, Dr. Kokayi, and the whole community of freedom fighters, Brother Bilal, Baba Bilal, and so many others that have been working to get Dr. Mutulu out of prison. He was diagnosed with a bone cancer. Is that correct?
That's
Yes.
correct, myeloma.
Yes. And so has his own health problems, and that's finally why they let him out. But he's been dealing and battling this cancer for many years. But they did finally let him out. And I had the privilege of got a chance to meet Dr. Mutulu, and really understand and thank him for the work that he has done to bring our communities together and to educate our communities, bringing acupuncture to our communities, because he knew that it could heal. And so, could you tell us, Dr. Kokayi, what happened after you formed the African Holistic Association? How did you come to form the Acupuncture Detox Collective, Specialist
Yeah.
Collective? How did that transpire?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me close out the thing about the HIV facility that
Yes.
we had in '92. We had
Yes.
10 guys who came in. People would leave because they wanted to have hot dogs, and they wanted cookies and cakes and candy, and they wanted white sugar, and we didn't have that. So we finally got a good population of 10 men. Out of that 10, we had about 6 of them full-blown AIDS. At the end of the year, they all tested HIV negative. Now, this is 1992, and right when it got kicked off, they said that there was a false negative test. Now, how could a person on their last leg, we had 4 or 5 people couldn't even hardly walk, because I used to pick them up and bathe these guys, you know, and you're telling us that that was a false negative, a false positive? No. But we were very successful in that program. Dr. Lee Muhammad gets introduced to alpha interferon by Dr. Davy Keoch out of Kenya. Remember this family. Dr. Davy Keoch out of Kenya discovered alpha interferon, you know, as an antiviral. They began to use that all over the world. Fast forward, here we are with the COVID virus. That same alpha interferon, the Cubans took it. Dr. Jose Herrera, the Cubans took it. Dr. Leem grabbed it again. The Nation of Islam grabbed it again, and he's been going all over the world with it. And as you know, we in the ADS Collective, everybody in the collective got a bottle. And it's great for any kind of immunodeficiency. This is the wonderful thing about it, you know, that it's great for that. So I just wanted to make that clear about the whole HIV piece, and my work in that field continues. I sat on the mayor's advisory board for HIV. When I used to go to the meetings in 1992 representing, I would walk in, I didn't see any black people. You know what that's like, Nicole. I didn't see any black people. You know what that's like. I didn't see any straight people or heterosexual people. You know what that's like. So I'm like, wait a minute, where's, you know, we got #1 drug addicts right here, all these dudes, you know, addicted to drugs, you know, etc. Where's that representation? Where the black, oh, why don't you do it? I joined. Soon thereafter, and I'm proud to say this, that what you might know as what we call the Max Robinson Center here in Washington, D.C., the first black HIV/AIDS center in the black community. We had to go all the way to the white community to go to get services. Now, who from our neighborhood is going all the way be going up there all the time, feeling uncomfortable, feeling unwanted, having to deal with the racism, you know, etc. You know, said don't have the money to get there. You know, that's a cross-town bus ride, you know, from southeast to northwest. It's like going to the other side of the world. You know, for some people who've never even been on that side of town.
That's right.
So we were able to get that center in. I was again put on another board for another 3 years that allowed us to redirect those funds, because we were in charge of the monies that was coming into DC. And that's how we were able to get that center. So we began to direct more money into the black organizations that were having to deal with AIDS. So I was proud to serve the city like that. And the mayor had to sign off. Yep, he signed off to let me be on there. So we did a lot of good rumbling, and we had a lot of good things happen. So fast forward, AWHA and how we got the ADS Collective going. When the Green Cross Acupuncture Clinic I'm talking about stopped, in 1990.
Yes.
They were starting to close down, and I said to myself, wow, something's got to happen. A year or two go by. I'm working at the HIV house. I'm running the HIV house. There's no acupuncture detox going on in the city, no acupuncture clinic. And that's when we had that meeting. And I said, let's put AWHA together. We put AWHA together, incorporated in 1990. I'm sorry, 1992. And we opened our office in 1992. In 1992, it was myself, Dr. Ali Muhammad, Dr. Gerald Douglas, who was the father, the father of holistic medicine DC, Dr. Warren Harrison, who's the grandfather of holistic medicine in DC, Dr. Sabi, Dr. Welsing, Dr. Anthony Kwaku Andau, who introduced what we now know as moringa and noni. He brought the noni plant here, and shared that with the Black community, as well as moringa, which is a hot topic right now. And the World Health Organization has deemed moringa one of the most powerfulest nutrients on the planet. You can take a teaspoon of that, throw it in somebody's mouth who's starving with a pot belly in Ethiopia somewhere on the ground, and they're going to get up. This is how powerful and how dense this particular product is. So now we have that more in the community because of the African Holistic Health Association promoting that moringa for the last 25 years or so, and it's now catching on, along with several other things. So the African Holistic Health Association started in 1992. We've opened up probably a total of maybe 10 clinics over the years, and we closed our last clinic down in 2008, where we actually did one of our last trainings for the Acupuncture Detox Specialist Collective in one of my clinics. So we're still now training all over the country, all over the world. At that clinic in 2008, after 98, when we started the collective with Dr. Africa, we sat down, myself and several other people. We say, you know what, we need to put this minty piece together for the ADS collective. And at that point, we put that together. Lakeem was a part of that process because he was here in DC working out of the clinic before he moved to Atlanta. And of course, when he got to Atlanta, Fulani Sunni Ali, who the Atlanta Collective is named after. So that's the Fulani Sunni Ali Atlanta ADS Collective chapter. And that's Bilal Sunni Ali's wife. She is the person who started that process, and yourself and Lakeem are two of the senior members as a part of that collective. So we are now in Washington, D.C., we're in Atlanta, we're in California, we're in Detroit, we're in Chicago, we're in Cleveland, we're in Boston, we're in New York, we're in Belize, we're in Ghana, and these are individuals that, I personally trained and that have come through the collective in terms of a training process and are part of the internal cadre, because we got many people that we've trained, but the internal cadre is that collective. And that collective, as you know, that you're a part of, our job is to continue to recruit, continue to promote acupuncture and naturopathic processes.
That's right.
In our community.
For our people. That's right. And it's an honor. It's an honor to learn from you, Dr. Kokayi. Thank you for bringing me into the fold. I know that the work that I do for myself, on myself, reflects in others. And I get to share that information and that education with others. So before we go, Doc, can you tell us a little bit more about how cannabis specifically kind of switched during your treatment of using naturopathy and herbs? How did it go from being that gateway drug, being told to you that it was a gateway drug, and then kind of shift into becoming a plant medicine that you all were using to help treat people?
Yeah. One of the things is that I've always been a gangster. So all through, the 70s, once I began to practice holistic medicine, cannabis was not legal. But because of my local affiliations, I was able to acquire this herbal product for my cancer patients, for my HIV/AIDS patients, for my immunodeficient patients, my high blood pressure patients, my patients that was dealing with sleep deprivation,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. I was able to acquire it because of my local affiliations. And of course, at that time, it was not legal to do that. But again, it was so important for me to make sure my clients were in a healing state of mind, that they felt that there was some progress and that they were doing better. And this is what that allowed to happen. And that made them, even in a lot of cases, more open to even more natural forms of healing.
That's
So
right.
I've always promoted that concept, especially after I met Dr. Sabi. And for everyone, Dr. Sabi put the stamp on it. Well, Dr. Sabi said, Dr. Sabi said, no, before Dr. Sabi, his
Right.
mama, grandmama, the herbalist who taught him. Because as we know, he was not a learned man from a school
Right.
and never went to school.
Right.
No, it's been going on since the beginning of time. So if the creator, number one source, put it here, and we know that it does have healing properties, why do we not use it? So fast forward, we of course are able to literally incorporate that. We invited you to LA, where I was working on Dr. Shakur, who has multiple myeloma, bone cancer. And as you saw, Nicole, the work that we was doing, fantabulous. And he definitely appreciates everything that you bought, and I know you've been back and forth in touch with him, and the products that you bought for him. He truly appreciates it. So we continue even today now to promote these natural, healing concepts and healing processes, and we know that you are, right on the forefront. We're so proud of you in terms of your representation of us and ensuring that this kind of information gets to our community. The only way it's going to get to our community is if we get it there. And
That's
I
right.
know that you are a universal person and you work with everybody, but I love you for your commitment to bring what you bring to us and bring to our community. Dr. Lee Muhammad says hello.
Oh, Dr. Kokayi, thank you so much. I love the work that you do. I appreciate you bringing me into the fold, treating me like your own child, educating me and informing me on what I can do to help my own community. I know that my dad's legacy lives on through me and through you and the work that you do. And so I just want to say thank you. I can't thank you enough, Dr. Kokayi, for all the work that you have done and all the work that you will continue to do to help heal our community. And so is there anything that you would like to leave with the
Yeah,
people before we go?
yeah,
I have your website down here and
yeah,
your Instagram streaming at
yeah.
the bottom. Is there anything else you'd like them to know?
I want to thank all of the ADS Collective members that are on this call. I want to thank all of my clients, all of those folk that I've worked with through the years, the people who represent RAP Incorporated and all the other programs that I've worked with. You guys on the line, we invited you. Thank you all so much for zooming in. Dr. Mutulu Shakur, write this website down, MutuluShakur.com. Mutulu, Mutulu, Shakur, SHAKUR.com. MutuluShakur.com. He's out. We've been working with him for over a couple of months. He's doing fantastically well. As Nicole can testify, but we're not out of the woods yet. All the support that he got for the 37 years, we need that support now to keep the quality of care going. Organic foods are expensive. He's still undergoing chemotherapy treatments, and that you're talking thousands of dollars every month just to pay for that stuff. The herbal treatments and programs and supplements that I have him on, that's a costly piece every month. So he's still doing those things as we left a 12-page protocol that he's following that I left there to, rebuild and deal with this bone cancer that he's been fighting for 7 years, family.
That's right.
7 years. And this
That's
man
right.
is just so powerful and so
He is.
spiritual that God, kept him here. It was not his time yet. He
Not
fought
yet.
COVID while he was in there. He had
Mhm.
stem cell transplant while he was in there, went through
Yeah.
radiation, chemo, so many different points in times, immunotherapy while he was in there, the
Yeah.
COVID, I think I mentioned glaucoma,
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff that he's been able to overcome and is now on his own 2 feet and is doing his smoothies and his juicing and, a little snack over here and there, because you got 37 years of stuff, you're trying to get in. But, this is what we want people to do, to continue to support Dr. Shakur. Check with Nicole on her site, check on our site for all of the programs and activities. There's a bunch of stuff going on today and tomorrow and next week, programs that are, depicting and talking about Mutulu Shakur and the work that he's done. Last but not least, Dope is Death. Dope is Death. Please go and watch it so you can get the truth about Dr. Mutulu Shakur and the work that he's done. Thank you so much, Nicole. And
Thank you
you all,
so
family.
much, Dr. Kokayi. Folks, if you're looking for the Dope is Death film, the documentary, you can find it on YouTube. It is under the Vice News channel, the entire documentary. It's about an hour and a half. It is worth every minute. Watch it, please. Share it with your family and friends. Understand the history that this wonderful man was a part of, that he continues to make history by helping to heal our communities. Support Dr. Kokayi. You can find him at communal effectherbals.com. If you're looking to purchase some interferon, reach out to me. I am a living testimony to how wonderful this medicine works, how it's gotten me through the last couple of years, and not end up in the hospital when I did get COVID or when I was feeling sick. And so I contributed all to this detox protocol, to the medicines and the herbs that Dr. Kokayi recommends. I love my ADS Collective family. Thank you so much again, Dr. Kokayi, for joining me today to tell us give us a little Black history. Remind our people and our community how important it is to take care of each other, because we cannot rely on somebody else to do it. We have to remember that we have the resources to do it ourselves. We just got to reach out, and there's family and community here that can help you do that. So if you're looking for more information, please join Minorities for Medical Marijuana. I do this programming once a month called Health is Wealth, the fourth Saturday of every month. So join us. Thank you again, Dr. Kokayi. Can't thank you enough. You've been so instrumental in helping me heal, and I know that the community. I love you too, Dr. Kokayi. Thanks again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got another one down the pipeline, ready for you to share with your family and friends. So please look for our YouTube channel, look for our LinkedIn channel, our Facebook channel. You can find this live recording and share it with your family and friends. Thank you again, Dr. Kokayi, for joining me today. All my ADS Collective family from all over the country joining. We really appreciate you. Keep up the fight. Keep up the good work. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again, fam.